When the sun has gone to rest, that's the time that we love best. Oh, it's lovely roaming in the gloaming, roaming in the gloaming on the bonny banks of Clyde. Roaming in the gloaming with my lassie by my side. When the sun has gone to rest, that's the time that we love best. Oh, it's lovely roaming in the gloaming.
That was the voice, and this is the story of a man who wrote a golden page in the history of music hall. Before radio, films and television, most comedians were remembered not for their humour but for their songs, and Harry Lauder's songs went around the world. Harry Lauder was born in 1870 in Portobello, Edinburgh, the son of a potter. And if he hadn't been born, he would have had to have been invented. Imagine writers in Hollywood wanting to create a memorable character who was different and would be remembered. If they fed all the ingredients into a computer, it might tell them that the character must be born in poverty, like Harry Lauder. And in 1870, when you were born in poverty, you died in poverty, unless you were exceptional. The computer, creating this unusual character as a star to be remembered, would also have given him a Scottish tongue and a fine voice, a kilt of colourful tartan, and always a crooked stick. But he had to have a loving heart, so they would also give him one son, just one, young John Lauder, a fine boy who studied at university on his way to a law degree, taking music as well, just to please his father. As an ambassador of Scotland, Harry Lauder would star in Canada and America, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and many other English-speaking lands, making 22 world tours, and becoming in his time the highest-paid artist in the music hall. But Harry Lauder was no creation of a computer or a character from a Hollywood musical. He was a man who faced life as it was and carried on when others fell by the wayside. He made people feel that life was worth living. And as Lauder would say about his songs, if you can't sing them, you can whistle them. And if you can't whistle them, you can just sit and tap your feet.
Courting a farmer's daughter. She's one of the nicest ever seen, and her cheeks they are a rosy red, and her age is just sweet 17. When I throw my arms around her neck and try to steal a kiss, oh, she'll wriggle and giggle and twist and twiggle, and then you'll hear her shouting. I say, will you stop your tickling joke? Stop your tickling joke. Then he make me laugh, say, Herdy, or you'll make me choke. I wish you'd stop your nonsense. Look at all the folk. Stop your tickling, tickling,
Harry Lauder spent the early years of his life in Portobello, and for one extraordinary quirk of fate, his Scottish identity might never have taken deep root. His great-niece, Greta Lauder Fraser.
He went down to England with his father and the rest of the family when he was 11. And his father died down there at the age of 32 with pneumonia. And Uncle's mother brought the family up to Arbroath with no help as people get nowadays. So she took in washing and ironing for people and made money that way. And Uncle and his brothers went into the mills half-time and half-time to the school. So it must have been a very hard life for them. They weren't starving at any time, but it must have been hard. And she must have been a wonderful woman.
It may have been a struggle in Arbroath, but it was there as a wee boy. He took part in his first singing competitions, and he retained a strong affection for the town throughout his whole career. But the family was soon on the move again. Harry's great-niece, Betty Lauder Hamilton, and music hall researcher Archie Foley.
His mother had brothers in Hamilton, so they moved there, and there he started working in the pits, various mines, first as on the surface, and then down below as a trapper, looking after the pit ponies. And he forged a lot of good relationships with the miners he worked with. And they also encouraged him in his singing ambitions.
He got a job in the mines, and he worked so hard there, he was made a contractor where he could say how much coal was going to come out of a seam, and he was making good money. But this great voice of his took him into competitions.
By the age of 20, Harry Lauder had fallen in love with a Salvation Army girl, Anne Valence, the daughter of the foreman in the pit, and he and Nance, as he always called her, were married in 1890. He finally decided to turn professional and left the pits to tour Scotland. His first success was as an Irish comedian. Harry Lauder, singer of the famous Irish song Callaghan Colligan. And he could boast that he was earning at least £4 a week as a star turn, making people laugh.
For I've just got off the chain, I've just got off the chain. I'm feeling as happy as a lot of ducks among the rain. I'm gonna be having the time of my life away from Mrs. McBain, because she'll maybe never get the chance to break her leg again. Just got off the chain, I've just got off the chain. I'm feeling as happy as a lot of ducks among the rain. I'm gonna be having the time of my life away from Mrs. McBain, because she'll maybe never get the chance to break her leg again. Goodbye. I'm away for my holiday.
By 1898, the lure of England was too strong. And after appearances in Tyneside, he went to the Argyle Theatre, Birkenhead, where he was so successful he ran out of his prepared material, and it was only then he included some Scottish songs, and the audience loved them. But London was still not ready for Harry Lauder. He tried agent after agent and as many managements, and was about to give up when he was asked to take the place of an act at Gatti's Music Hall. Once again, the magic worked, on stage and off as well. Archie Foley.
When he took the big step to try his luck down there, to read of how he dressed, I mean, it sounds like he was dressed up to go on stage in a comic act, with a top hat, yellow spats, etc. I think when he was in public, when he called on people, he was Harry Lauder, the performer, and always wanted to make an impression. He's a good example of an overnight success for which he prepared for about 10 to 15 years.
Now a successful British star, Lauder was invited to return to Scotland for pantomime in Aladdin at the Theatre Royal Glasgow with star billing and a star salary. He brought something unique for a comedian to the pantomime, a love song. And he sold it in a very particular way. At the overture, it was included before the pantomime began. Then at the interval in the entr'acte, as the audience sat waiting for the second act to begin, the simple melody was played again. And by the time he came on stage to sing it, the audience felt they knew the song, and so they left the theatre with the melody firmly in their minds. In those days, you can always tell if a song was a hit or not. Next morning, the message boys were either whistling it or singing it. There was no need for record charts. All you needed were your lugs. And this was the song.
I love a lassie, a bonny heeling lassie. Could you see her, you would fancy her as well. I met her in September, popped a question in November. I'll soon hear aught myself. Her father has consented, I'm feeling quite contented. I've been and sealed the bargain with a kiss. I sit and weary when I think about my dearie, and you'll always hear me singing this. I love a lassie, a bonny lassie. She's as pure as the lily in the dell. She's as sweet as the heather, the bonny purple heather, Mary my Scotch bluebell. I love a lassie, a bonny lassie. She's as pure as the lily in the dell. She's as sweet as the heather, the bonny purple heather, Mary my Scotch bluebell.
In 1907, Lauder was invited by an agent to play in America. But by the time he arrived in the States, the agent had disappeared. Lauder arrived in the man's office where there were many people working and said, "Is anybody interested in being my agent?" William Morris, a tall youth of 18, stood up and said, "Yes, I will." And as Frank Rose details in his book, The Agency, there began the partnership which was to establish the William Morris Agency and help it become the biggest artist representation in America, and it is still a major worldwide agency today.
On his first American appearance, the audiences were ecstatic. A revelation in vaudeville, Variety called him. The following year, William Morris visited Birkenhead and made Harry Lauder a staggering offer. $3,000 a week for a 6-month American tour, plus expenses for himself, his wife, and his dresser, plus a kilted pipe and drum band to escort him to the state capitol or city hall of every city he visited. Morris had one stipulation. From the moment he stepped onto the dock in New York, Lauder must never again wear trousers in public, only a kilt. They sealed the deal with an oath. On October 13th, 1908, Lauder opened in New York to standing ovations. The demand for tickets was so great that Morris set up camp stools on the stage to handle the overflow. Once again, America was in the grip of Laudermania. Displays of Scottish regalia gracing the windows at Wanamaker's and Marshall Field's. String ensembles filling the air in the hotels and restaurants with his lilting melodies. Pipe and drum parades to city halls and state capitals across the land. An entire week at the Manhattan Opera House sold out.
In all the years they worked together, Lauder and Morris never had a contract, just a handshake. And that was Harry Lauder's way with many others. The Clark brothers at the Argyll and Birkenhead had released Lauder to take up the American offer, and he never forgot that. When he became an international star, he always returned to the Argyll without a contract. Every year he would say, "Just give me what you can afford." Lauder's trips to America were many, and all created a legend that still exists in American theatre history today, Jimmy Black.
Lauder was a wonderful performer. He had this wonderful voice. He was a funny man as well. His timing was brilliant. And he had such a stage presence. And it was wonderful to sit anticipating Lauder coming on. And you could actually feel a change coming into the atmosphere when he took the stage. And you could well understand why audiences in America had sat in the theatre to the early hours of the morning because his ship had been delayed and it would take a wee while for him to get into New York. And Harry would come off the ship in the early hours of the morning and go to a Broadway theatre where people were still waiting for him. And that great Scottish megastar went on and gave a performance. How many great stars of today can claim to have that kind of allegiance from their fans? Maybe the Beatles.
The best means of transport around the States in those days was by train. So Harry Lauder had his own train, once used by President Theodore Roosevelt and renamed the Harry Lauder Special. It had dining cars, sleeping cars, baggage cars for the scenery and luggage, while Harry's own coach and observation car had also previously been used by the great Sarah Bernhardt. There's another famous story of a time a rival management tried to block Lauder's appearance, but William Morris was so respected for his honesty that he managed to get through to the President of the United States. And when he informed him of the facts, the President himself phoned the rival management and warned them that he would instruct the Attorney General of the United States to take action against them unless they allowed Harry Lauder to appear. That was the strength of William Morris and the power of Harry Lauder. Irving Caesar was one of Lauder's admirers in the States.
I was there when he played the Fulton Theater in Brooklyn. My father and some of my father's friends, and they hardly knew the language then. This many years ago. I was only about 12 years old then, and this little man, Harry Lauder, came out, and half of them didn't know what he was talking about, but they loved him as soon as he came out, as soon as he began talking. So all the lusses would kiss him, Mackay, and Mackay is as bald as this sycamore. But they all laughed with Harry Lauder. He established a oneness.
Picture, if you can, the spotlight shining with this little man with a tam-o'-shanter kilt and the crooked cane. Keep playing while I put on me kilt and me tam-o'-shanter. And Mr. Bring, if you're not hired, man, hand me a crooked stick with you. I am now putting on me kilt. I'm ready now, Mr. Bring, I'm ready. For she's my Daisy, my bonny Daisy. She's as sweet as sugar candy, and she's very fond of Sunday, and I'm weary about me dearie. I would rather lose me whip than lose me Daisy. Footman.
Al Jolson. William Morris instructed the filmmaker, William Selig, to undertake his most ambitious project, Harry Lauder, singing and talking pictures. There were problems synchronizing Lauder's music and stage performance, and Al Jolson's The Jazz Singer eventually beat them to it. In 1912, Lauder took part in the first Royal Command performance. He'd appeared at Windsor and Balmoral for the King, but this was the first command appearance for the British Music Hall, and a sign that music hall entertainers were now regarded as respectable. A Welsh friend once told me, "In my village, Jimmy, if you went to the music hall, you were damned, but you could go and see Harry Lauder." In 1913, Sir Frank Tate, who owned many theatres in Australia, travelled to London with the main purpose of getting Harry Lauder to visit Australia and New Zealand. The contract was signed, and for this, Lauder would be paid £1,000 a week, and his travel costs, an incredible amount of money. So, straight from another American tour, Harry and Mrs. Lauder sailed on to Australia in 1914 and were welcomed at the quayside by over 4,000 Scots with more than one pipe band. The son, John, a captain in the Territorials, joined them in Australia but was warned that he could be recalled to his regiment as there was a threat of mobilisation. The reception down under was everything one could expect for a superstar. To the Scots overseas, Lauder was the finest ambassador of his country, and apart from his songs that took them back to that far-off land they loved so well, he reminded them of other times.
Beautiful Sunday, I wish it would never come Monday, 'cause I lie between the sheets, my bed adorning. Oh, it's very nice, man, it's very, very nice to get your breakfast in your bed on Sunday morning. Beautiful Sunday, I wish it would never come Monday, 'cause I lie between the sheets, my bed adorning. Oh, it's very nice. It's very, very nice to get your breakfast in. Oh, boy, what a treat.
A master of publicity, in Australia, Lauder found an old pair of boots on a rubbish dump. They had holes in the soles and they were green with age. He put them outside the door in his hotel to be polished. When the boy, who had to polish the shoes and boots for the guests, saw the Scots boots, he couldn't stop telling everybody, and when he tried to pick them up, he found the laces went under the door and were tied round the leg of a chair, so, as Lauder said, nobody would steal them. He also reminded his audience that money was never meant to go round. It was made flat for packing. Now, of course, Lauder didn't start the myth of the mean Scot. That's another story. He just helped it along a bit. His great-niece, Greta Lauder Fraser, knew the real story of his generosity, but gamekeeper's son, Bill Henderson, experienced the public face of Lauder's canny Scot.
My father came round, and he was the gamekeeper in charge, and he asked me if I'd carry Sir Harry Lauder's cartridge bag. All the other beaters were given a bag each as necessary. when Harry Lauder had came up to Blairgowrie from Stephen the night before with a chauffeur-driven car. Anyway, I carried Sir Harry's bag all day, and at night would hand them all back. Well, the normal thing was when you handed the carriage bags back, you got a tip from the owner, which used to be £0.50. My tip was, "Thanks very much, laddie, thank you." And that was it.
He really encouraged it by giving small tips to people, and if they looked at it, he took it back. And nobody saw him slipping £1 to somebody later on. But people remember that even to this day. So he was right.
I went to a tea party 3 weeks ago. I had never been at one before. I was dressed up in my best just like this and got there at 4:45. And the lassie that served me my tea was a queen, one of the bonniest I've ever seen. Susie McLean is her name, and I'll tell, I've never done anything but sing to myself since I met her. Susie McLean, when are you going to change your name? Just say the word and I'll make you my wife, and I'll love you forever the rest of your life.
In the middle of the tour, on the 3rd of August 1914, his son John received a telegram with 2 words: mobilise, return. Harry and his wife carried on with the rest of the engagements, and when they finally returned, John was training with his regiment in Bedford and about to go overseas. Lauder carried on with various shows for wartime charities until, in 1916, he starred in a revue at the Shaftesbury Theatre, London, called 3 Cheers. His son John, who'd been wounded on the Western Front, had rejoined his regiment after leave. On New Year's Eve, that special time of the year when we all hope for a better future, Lauder returned to his hotel after the show, and there he received the telegram. The Secretary of State for War regrets to inform you that your son, Captain John Lauder, 1st 8th Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, has been killed in action. He immediately returned to Dunoon to John's mother and the grief of family, friends and neighbours. Telegrams and letters poured in, from the highest in the land to the simple little messages of sympathy from other mothers and fathers who had also suffered the same pain and loss and who understood the agony. And many messages said, "You must carry on. Don't desert us, Harry." After 3 days, Harry Lauder returned to the show. On his opening night, every member of the audience, wanting him to know not only how they felt, but how so many others felt too, gave him a standing ovation that went on and on. And as he stood there, in a spotlight, a lonely figure, representing so many others, at that point, Harry Lauder became not just a singer who could make the audience laugh and enjoy life, but part of the fabric of the nation. The finale of the show was a new song he had brought to the production. On stage marched a company of Scots Guards, and Lauder sang this song. And how he managed that night and where he found the courage to carry on is a mystery.
Oh, when the fighting is over and the war is done and the flags are waving free, when the bells are ringing and the boys are singing songs of victory, when we all gather round the old fireside and the old mother kisses are gone, oh, the laddies will be laughing, oh, the laddies who fought and won. And when the fighting is over and the war is gone and the flags are waving free, when the bells are ringing and the boys are singing songs of victory, when we all gather round the old fireside and the old mother kisses are gone, oh, the laddies will be laughing, oh, the laddies who
When the show closed, Lauder offered to go to France to entertain the troops and set off with a small piano strapped to the back of a car, an officer to guide them. And he played anywhere there was a gathering of soldiers, in rest camps, in quarries, in hospitals, anywhere they were. Even at the side of the road, a company would come marching along, tired, back from the front line, and he would be there. "Would you like a song, lads?" "Go, blimey, it's Harry Lauder." And how they loved to join in.
When we meet like this, it's grand. Oh, man. I think we'll have a wee jock and Doris, eh? There's a good old Scottish custom that has stood the test of time. It's a custom that's been carried out in every land and clime, where brother Scots foregather. It's aye the usual thing. Just before we say good next, we fill our cups and sing. Just a wee joch and Doris, just a wee drap at all, just a wee joch and Doris, before we gang awa'. There's a wee wifey waiting in a wee button bed. If you can say it's a brabrecht moonlicht nicht, well, you're all right, you can. Just a wee joch and Doris, just a wee drap at all, just a wee joch and Doris, before we gang awa'. There's a wee wifey waiting in a wee button bed. If you can say it's a brabrecht moonlicht nicht, well, you're all right, you can.
Half a mile from the Albert Beaupont Road in France, there's a tiny hill opposite a 1914-18 trench called Mash Valley, called that by British troops for many sad reasons. And there, in a little cemetery opposite, is the grave of John Lauder. I visited that place, and as we arrived at the edge of a village nearby, some children were playing in and around another small cemetery. But when they saw the British number plates on the car, they slipped away. And I thought that was the loveliest tribute to our men, that well over 70 years later, these French children had been taught to respect this hallowed ground. In his book, A Minstrel in France, Lauder, his visit to that special place. 500 British boys lie sleeping in that small acre of silence, and among them was my own laddie. I went alone to my boy's grave and flung myself down on the warm, friendly earth. My memories of that moment are not very clear, but I think that for a few minutes I was utterly spent, that my collapse was complete. He was such a good boy. I hope you do not think, those of you, my friends, who may read what I'm writing here, that I'm exalting my lad above all other Britons who died for king and country, or above the brave lads of other races who died to stop the Hun. But he was such a good boy. Such chums we were always. And as I lay there, as I look back on it now, I can think of but one desire that ruled and moved me. I wanted to reach my arms down into that dark grave and clasp my boy tightly to my breast and kiss him. And I wanted to thank him for what he had done for his country and his mother and for me. When he returned from France, Harry Lauder decided that he wanted to do something for the men who would be wounded with loss of limbs and need help when the war was over. He founded the Harry Lauder Fund for returning ex-servicemen and set out to raise £1 million. Visiting America and Canada to urge support for the war effort, he had to battle with many who did not believe that they should have anything to do with the war. But Harry Lauder was determined to fight for all the support he could get and any help for the old country.
I'll never forget the day I went and joined the 93rd. The chums I used to run with said they thought I looked absurd. They saluted me and gathered round me in a ring. And as I wagged my tartan kilt, they all began to sing. He's a he'll and righty private Jock McGade. There's no another soldier like him in the Scotch Brigade. Reared among the heather, you can tell he's Scottish built by the wiggle, waggle of the kilt. He'll and righty private Jock McGade. There's no another soldier like him in the Scotch Brigade. Reared among the heather, you can tell he's Scottish built by the wiggle, waggle of the kilt. Oh, well, ta-ta.
The sadness in 1917 with tremendous loss of life, and then 1918, each newspaper seemed filled with the names of men killed in action, until it seemed the war would never end. Then, in time, it did, and the boys came home. But not John Lauder or many others who lay in Flanders Field, and so many with a stone that said, "A soldier known unto God." With the war over, Harry and his wife once again returned to Australia, and it was there, when on tour in 1919, he received word that he was to be honoured with a knighthood, becoming the first knight of the music hall. In the years that followed, there was one world tour after another as he sang a new song that gave courage to those who felt they had so little to live for. For as the song said, life teaches us, when you're tired and when you're weary, somehow or other you still have to carry on.
Keep right on to the end of the road. Keep right on to the end. If the way be long, let your heart be strong. Keep right on round the bend. If you're tired and weary, still journey on till you come to your happy abode, where all you love and you're dreaming of will be there at the end of the road.
In 1921, Sir Harry raised a monument to his son opposite the estate at Glenbranta, and it is there to this day. 6 years later, he was made a freeman of the city of Edinburgh, but just before the ceremony, Lady Lauder died and was buried at Glenbranta beside the monument to her son, John. On the platform at the freedom ceremony was an empty chair as a token to the woman who had stood by his side and shared his joy and pain. In the years that followed, Sir Harry asked his niece Greta to accompany him on his tours and keep away the many women who felt he not only had a title, but must have a lot of money as well. His great nieces, Greta Lauder Fraser and Betty Lauder Hamilton.
He was a man of great habits, very disciplined, had to have his meals at the exact time every day, 9 o'clock for breakfast, 1 o'clock for lunch, and 5:30 for his tea. A simple man who didn't eat a lot of fancy things. High tea was far more important to him than dinner. And sometimes when he was out at cocktail parties and people were eating all kinds of things, Uncle Harry would ask for a boiled egg. And some people thought he was being gimmicky and doing it for attention, but he was just not wanting to eat all the fancy things. I suppose the hostesses sometimes would get fed up with him because, of all things, a boiled egg's not something you expect to be asked for at a cocktail party.
He was, in lots of ways, a modest man, a humble man, but not as regards his work, because he knew his own value and he knew he was good. But as an ordinary man sitting at the fireside and so on, he was quiet, modest, and God-fearing man. He lived with the principle, if you can't see good, say nothing. But he would always stress to them that they should have a nice, good, clean act and not say anything doubtful on stage.
In 1933, Lauder decided to leave Dunoon and build a new house in Straven. On the morning the house builders were due to start work at 8 a.m, they found a caravan in the field, and Harry Lauder had his watch out to make sure they started on time. This was just one of the many comic things he did to make sure people talked about him.
We got out of school, were on the first bus up to Strathen, and that was us. And we were evacuated up there for about a year when the war was on, because he thought we would be safer up there. 7 miles away from here, I mean, it was crazy, but he would play with us, with our toys, and if we were having imaginary tea parties, he took part in them. We would get the maid to introduce us as make-believe Duchess of so-and-so, and he entered into the fun of things, probably because he'd missed out on the childhood of his own child, because he was working away abroad so much when his son was a young boy. So he entered into it with us.
One room was dedicated as a museum. All his memorabilia of his great theatre career were in there. Walking sticks of every imaginable shape. One I remember from the Prince of Wales, who at that time was the Duke of Windsor, of course. And we went through all the more public parts of the house. And then Greta said to me, "Jimmy, I'm going to show you something that we don't show to a lot of people. Come on upstairs with me." We went upstairs and along the corridor, and she opened the door of a bedroom, and inside there was set out Captain John Lauder's room. He had been killed, of course, in the First World War. But all his belongings, which had been in his bedroom down there in Argyll, had been brought into Lauder Hall when Lauder Hall was built, and placed in that bedroom exactly as they were on the day that John Lauder left for the front in France, never to return. There was an eeriness about that room that I could feel, and we just stood looking at it. Then she quietly closed the door, and we spoke not another word.
It must have been at Braemar, at the games, and the Queen saw Uncle Harry, and she came and spoke, and Uncle Harry looked at the little girls, and she said, "You realise who this is?" And the little girls said, "Yes." And the Queen Mother said, "This is the man that you hear in your gramophone in the nursery." So Uncle Harry said to Princess Elizabeth, as she was then, "And which song do you like best?" And she said, very elegantly, "It's nice to get up in the morning, but it's nicer to lie in your bed. That's my favourite, Sir Harry." So the Queen must, in a way, remember Uncle Harry.
Oh, my brother Jock's a baker, and he sleeps along with me. And the winter mornings, Jock has to rise and start his work at 3. And before he gets his trousers on, his legs are nearly numb. So while I stand and shivering, I lie in my bed and hum. Oh, it's nice to get up in the morning when the sun begins to shine. At 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock in the good old summertime. Or when the snow is snowing and it's murky overhead. Oh, it's nice to get up in the morning, but it's nicer to lie in your bed.
By 1939, Harry Lauder had retired. But there was another war, and this time the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, asked the Scottish minstrel, who was then 69, to go out again and entertain the sons and the grandsons of the men he had entertained in 1914.
And here's your chairman, Sir Harry Lauder. Now I'm going to talk to you. You're all making things for the forces because we require them to make sure and make sicker for the Christmases that has got to come.
Yet, you're doing a great business. Now, it's a fine thing to sing. Will you sing?
I love a lassie, a bonny, bonny lassie. She's as sure as ever in the day. She's as sweet as ever, the bonny cocoa heather, very much thoughts through there.
And that's when I first met Sir Harry Lauder, when I appeared in the same bill at a charity concert for the Navy at the King's Theatre in Greenock. I was 12 and my wee sister was 9. And I can see him now, rehearsing with the orchestra, and his effect on the audience as he handled them with years of experience, a master of his craft. At the end of the war, Sir Harry was 75 and delighted to receive the freedom of Hamilton. And when Winston Churchill received the freedom of the city of Edinburgh in 1948, he asked that Sir Harry join him on the platform. The honour confirmed yet again his standing with all levels of the community. Show business writer Gordon Irving and Betty Lauder Hamilton.
Upstairs, between the two main bedrooms, was a sitting room, and Uncle Harry really loved that room. In that room was the piano on which he composed I Love a Lassie, and in which he and Irving Berlin had a duet that was absolutely disastrous. In the room also was the parrot, and the parrot, Polly, came with Gran in 1933 to live in Lauder Hall. We never knew what age it was. It said Damn the Kaiser, so we know it was before about 1914. They went upstairs to chat. Aunt Greta gave me the Simolina to give to the bird, and I went up the stairs with it. And here was Irving Berlin, who couldn't sing, singing. And Uncle Harry, Irving Berlin would have been better at the piano, but Uncle Harry was playing the piano badly, because he really just worked with one finger when he was composing I Love a Lassie and things like that. And this duet was absolutely horrendous. And the parrot, who used to join in a lot with Uncle Harry singing, was looking at them with beady eyes. And if the parrot wasn't pleased, he threw out his seed. Well, there was no seed in there at that time, and he went down to the bottom and he threw out his dirt at them. And he gave them the biggest raspberry I've ever heard. So I went downstairs, with the empty spoon, and I said, the bird's given him the bird.
He was a friend of Henry Ford, the motor car magnate. He was a friend of Andrew Carnegie from Fife, from Dunfermline. And Bob Hope, Laurel Hardy, many others, all came to Lauder Hall. And what they wanted to do was to meet this man in his own home surroundings. And he gave them a lovely welcome and enjoyed cracking with them. And they would talk about the old days. And of course, one of them was the late Danny Kaye, who had made a name in Glasgow and in London on the stage, but had been in many movies. And Danny came to Glasgow, and he wanted... Now, Danny, in the back of his mind, had an idea, and I think you know what it is. He wanted to play Harry Lauder on a movie. Now, the problem was he was too tall, and nobody then had the money to make a Lauder film. And they still don't seem to have, because it's a grand rags to riches story. So that is the movie that has still to be made.
He died about a year after I met him. I have a friend called Sir Alexander King, who arranged for me to meet Sir Harry Lauder when I first arrived in Glasgow. And I thought we were going out to his house, but we pulled into this station, I think it was the Central Station, and he said, come along with me, I want to take you somewhere. And we went upstairs and we walked into a room, and there was Sir Harry Lauder. And I shook hands with him, and he said, "Ach, how do you do?" He said, "I've been hearing about you for a long time." And I said, "Well, Sir Harry, I've been hearing about you all my life." And we just hit it off just great. And we spent the evening together. There was a little dinner party given. And then I went out to spend the day with him at Straven, at his house. That's where he gave me his cane.
There was to be one final recording for the BBC, an anniversary concert on his 75th birthday, produced by the Scottish Home Service. There was a dinner at Lauder Hall with the BBC Scotland controller Andrew Stewart, Bailey William Thompson of Thompson's Pianos, who supplied Lauder with his piano in 1895 for his son John, and of course, the great entertainer himself, former BBC Scotland assistant controller Pat Walker.
As the time slipped by, it was evident that the so-called meeting would eventually come to an end and still nothing would be said about broadcasting. So, sensing this, Andrew Stewart decided that it was going to be a case of now or never, and he decided to dispense with any further pleasantries. And he thanked the old man for his hospitality, and he voiced the thought that Lauder knew quite well why he had come, and that it was clear that he had no interest in any proposition that the BBC might put forward. Yes, Andrew understood that Lauder had a deep commitment to the Scottish working man, but with over 100,000 of them still unemployed, being top of the bill for a week at the Glasgow Alhambra wasn't going to help them, particularly as few, if any, would be able to afford the price of a seat. They could, of course, enjoy listening to him on the radio, but that was still out of the question, or so it seemed. Deathly silence. Lauder apparently was visibly moved by this. And then, as if somehow she knew that a gesture was needed, up the stairs came Greta Lauder, his niece, bearing 3 very large glasses of whiskey. And the men drank, and the deal was agreed. Now, later in the car on the way back to Glasgow, Andrew was advised to treat it as a gentleman's agreement. No contract, said the Bailey, nothing in writing. You've shaken hands in it, leave it there. Now, a contract would have shown the amount of the fee being paid. But it wasn't easy for Scotland to persuade the bureaucrats of London to dispense with all the paperwork, even in those days and so on. So eventually, Greta the niece dealt with the paperwork, and Lauder, in theory, knew nothing about it. He returned to broadcasting, and on the face of it, never ever saw a contract. He had every reason to believe that he was the highest paid performer in the BBC's books, and I reckon probably for some time he probably was.
Sir Harry Lauder died in February 1950 at the age of 79. For family and nation, it was still a great shock.
He had been ill for about 9 months and was able to talk to us. It wasn't like he lost his speech or anything like that. But it was a very sad time. When the end came, it was very sad. You felt part of your world. Things would never really be the same again. Your world had changed.
All day, cables and telegrams of sympathy have been arriving at Lauder Hall, Straven, the home of Sir Harry Lauder, the famous Scots comedian who died last night.
The greatest accolade that ever was given to him, in a way, was his funeral, which was a very sad and a very wonderful display of emotion by the people of the district of Lanarkshire, because Aunt Greta took the hearse from the house right down to the church in Hamilton, where his old friend, a wonderful preacher called Hartness Graham, preached a eulogy. And all the way down that stretch of about 8 to 10 miles, people came and stood, as they used to do in the old days, at the corners of streets and so on, all the way down there.
When he died, so many people were affected. In fact, I met Greta Lauder not long afterwards, and she was telling me about a piece that Sir Harry's doctor had written about him, about the passing. And she said, I'll send you a copy of the verse, and she did. This is what Dr. Stewart wrote, the passing. Upon an ocean of love his course he set, to the great unknown, whose time as yet for welcome seemed afar, for his last crossing of the heavenly bar. And so he journeyed on from day to day, sure in his faith and him, whose immortal way to heaven, though far and long, awaited the singer of God's gift of song. At last the rising sun, whose beams alone welcomed the singer to the heavenly home, and at its setting, whence all travels cease, God give his singer his immortal peace.
Everywhere was filled with flowers, and the smell of those flowers, the scent of them anyway, lived on in my memory for ages in that house. When I saw all these people from the beginning of that cortege leaving the front gate, which was seldom used, right down through Straven, and the multitudes of people who come out and stood, it was a wonderful send-off to a wonderful man who had loved the Scottish people, and they, in a way, were paying back what they liked and loved about him. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing.
The outpouring of love and affection for Sir Harry was genuine. His passing was marked by statesmen and local villagers alike, and the memories of the supreme performing artist live on today.
He was a great perfectionist. And the type of song, it appealed to everybody. It touched their hearts.
I think it was Compton Mackenzie, the great writer and critic, who once said there were two perfect voices. One was John McCormack, the Irish tenor. The other was Harry Lauder, because their diction was absolutely beautiful. You're never in any doubt about what they were singing about.
What made him so good was his enthusiasm, his own enjoyment in his singing, in the fact that he was entertaining people.
Often I hear of younger people who have been ill, very ill, and they've written to say they had repeated the words of "Keep Right On to the End of the Road" while they've been ill. They've used it as if it was a hymn, and how much strength and courage they'd got from these words. And I think that's lovely. I think that would have pleased Uncle very much, to think they had helped somebody through his music.
For me, Sir Harry Lauder remains one of Scotland's great sons. And to those who may think otherwise, there's a saying in theatres all over the world: if you think you can do better, follow that.
Everybody must realise that this has been a great treat to be singing to grannies and granddads, to whom I sang, well, more than 50 years ago. This is my birthday. I'm 75 years old, and I hope to go on singing and singing right on and on to the end of the road. Every road through life is a long, long road filled with joys and sorrows too. As we journey on, how your heart may yearn for the things most dear to you. With wealth and love to sow, so onward we shall go. Keep right on to the end of the road. Keep right on to the end. Though the way be long, let your heart be strong. Keep right on round the bend. Though you're tired and weary, still journey on till you come to your happy abode, where all you love and you're dreaming of will be there at the end of the road. Keep right on to the end of the road. Keep right on to the end. Though the way be long, let your heart be strong. keep right on round the bend. Though you're tired and weary, still journey on till you come to your happy abode, where all you love and you're dreaming of will be there at the end of the road.
Roman in the Gloamin was presented for BBC Radio 2 by Jimmy Logan. The reporter was Johanna Hall, and readings were by Paul Burchard. The programme was produced by Michael Shaw of Radio Scotland.